Okay, let's just dive right in. It is Tuesday, February 17th, 2026.
Right.
And if you've been glancing at the financial headlines and you're feeling this weird vibrating tension in the air, you are not imagining it.
Not at all. We are exactly 11 days away from a huge deadline.
A massive one set by the White House, February 28th.
That is the date circled in red marker on, I think, every desk in Washington right now.
And the topic on the table, it isn't just crypto in the way we used to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, not the old days.
Not the Dogecoin memes, the cartoons of bored monkeys, the wild speculation. That era feels like a lifetime ago.
A different world.
What we're watching right now is a high-stakes, bare-knuckle turf war
Right.
between the biggest banks in American history and the crypto industry. And the fight is over a very simple and, frankly, very terrifying question.
Who actually gets to control the future of money?
Exactly.
It really is a battle for the plumbing of the global financial system. And the weapon of choice right now, the thing causing all this friction, is a specific piece of legislation.
The one we're unpacking today.
The Digital Asset Market Clarity Act of 2025, H.R. 3633.
Right, which most people just call the Clarity Act. And we should probably flag this immediately, just for our listeners up north in Canada.
Oh, good point.
This is not the Canadian Clarity Act from 2000 that deals with Quebec leaving the country.
A crucial distinction. We are not discussing Quebec secession today.
Definitely not. We are strictly talking about the United States H.R. 3633. So to get to the bottom of this, we've pulled together a pretty serious stack of sources.
It's a heavy stack, but we need it.
We've got the full text of the bill itself, legislative fact sheets, some very heated updates from the DeFi Rate news outlet, analysis from the Conference Board, and some regulatory reports from Elliptic.
Right.
And our mission is simple. We need to explain why this bill, which passed the House by a landslide last summer, has suddenly just hit a brick wall in the Senate.
And why the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, is running around calling people nihilists.
Yeah, we have to get to that. And most importantly, we need to explain why a fight over something that sounds really boring, like stablecoin yield, might actually change where you keep your life savings next year.
Because that's really the crux of it. It's not just abstract regulation.
Yeah.
It's about who is allowed to pay you interest on your own money.
Okay, so let's dive in. Segment 1, the core framework. Before we get to the drama, we have to understand the machinery.
The mechanics of the bill.
For the last decade, the big complaint from the crypto industry was that U.S. regulation was a total mess. They called it regulation by enforcement.
Right. Imagine playing a football game where the referee doesn't tell you the rules until after you throw a touchdown.
And then he fines you for it.
And then he fines you for it. That was the vibe.
Yeah.
You didn't know you broke a law until, a lawsuit arrived in the mail.
And the confusion was mostly about who was actually in charge, right? This mission control problem.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
You had two different mission controls trying to fly the same rocket. You had the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And they're two very different animals. The SEC is full of lawyers. They want to protect investors, police disclosures.
And the CFTC.
They're used to regulating wheat and corn and oil. They care about market mechanics and hedging. And the industry was just trapped in the middle, with both agencies fighting over who gets jurisdiction.
So the Clarity Act is basically a peace treaty between them. It draws a line in the sand.
A very bright line. The bill creates this division of labor based on what the asset actually does. So on one side, you've got the SEC.
Okay.
They keep jurisdiction over what the bill calls investment contract assets.
And let's translate that. Investment contract usually just means a security?
Basically, yes. Think of it as the fundraising phase. If you're a centralized startup and you create a super token and you sell that token to the public to raise money to build your app and you control the roadmap,
That's a security.
that's a security. You are selling a promise of future profit based on your work. The SEC regulates you just like they regulate Apple or Tesla stock.
Okay, that seems fair. I mean, that's just standard consumer protection. If I give you money to build a company, I want protections.
Of course.
But the crypto argument has always been that Bitcoin isn't a company. There is no CEO of Bitcoin to subpoena.
Precisely. Bitcoin is a network, not a corporation. And that is where the CFTC comes in.
Okay.
Under H.R. 3633, the CFTC gets exclusive jurisdiction over digital commodities. This covers the spot markets, the actual buying and selling of decentralized assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum.
This feels like a massive win for the industry. The CFTC is generally seen as, what, the cool dad compared to the SEC?
That's the general perception, yeah. They regulate markets. They don't usually try to ban the thing being traded.
But the tricky part has to be the transition. How do you go from being a security, which is controlled by a startup, to a commodity that nobody controls? You can't just flip a switch.
No, and the bill actually has a test for this. It's what you were reading about, the mature blockchain concept.
Yeah.
And this is honestly the most technical, but I think fascinating part of the text. It's a legal pathway for an asset to evolve. It's called the 20% rule.
Which states what, exactly?
It states that a blockchain system is considered mature and therefore a commodity under the CFTC if no single entity controls 20% or more of the supply or the governance votes.
Okay, so let's run a scenario. If I launch a project and I hold, say, 50% of the tokens, I'm a security.
Correct. You're centralized. You're the boss. The SEC is your regulator.
But if over 5 years I sell those tokens, I distribute them to users, airdrop them to the community, and eventually my team holds less than 20%, and the network just runs on its own.
Then you can petition to be reclassified. It provides a legal off-ramp from securities laws.
So it acknowledges that these things can change.
It acknowledges that these networks can start centralized like a startup in a garage and become decentralized like a public utility.
That is a huge shift in legal thinking. It's almost biological, like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. The regulation changes as the organism changes.
That's a great way to put it. And there is one more exclusion here that we have to mention specifically for the developers listening.
Oh, right. Sections 309 and 409, the DeFi exclusion?
Yes. This is critical. The bill explicitly excludes ancillary blockchain activities from being treated as financial institutions.
In English.
It means if you're a software engineer writing code for a decentralized exchange, or if you're just running a node that validates transactions, you are not a bank.
So you don't have to register as a money transmitter.
Exactly. The bill protects the idea that writing code is speech, not banking. If you just build the hammer, you aren't responsible for every house built with it.
Which protects the whole open source ethos of the space. So, okay, on paper, this sounds great.
It does.
It solves the jurisdiction problem. It protects developers. The House passed it 294 to 134 back in July 2025. That's a massive bipartisan margin in this political climate.
Huge. A landslide, really.
So why are we sweating? Why are we sitting here in February 2026, staring at a deadline, with the bill completely stuck in the Senate mud?
Well, that brings us to the messy part. Segment 2, the stalling point.
Or as you called it, the war on yield.
The war on yield. It always comes down to money.
Always.
And this is where the TradFi giants, the traditional banks, are colliding head-on with the crypto world. It turns out the sticking point isn't Bitcoin. It isn't Ethereum. It isn't even the SEC.
It's stable coins.
It's stable coins.
And just to make sure everyone is on the same page, these are the tokens pegged to the dollar. One coin, $1. They're boring. They don't go up in value. Why is the war being fought over the boring stuff?
Because of the interest, the yield. Think about how a stablecoin works. You give an issuer, say Circle or Paxos, 100 real dollars. They give you 100 digital dollars.
Right.
But they don't just put your 100 real dollars in a vault to gather dust. They buy U.S. Treasury bills with them.
And right now, Treasury bills are paying pretty decent interest.
Exactly. So the issuer is sitting on this pile of cash that's making, say, 4% or 5% interest.
Yeah.
Now, last year, we passed the Genius Act of 2025.
Right.
That law regulated the issuers.
Right.
And to keep things safe, it banned those issuers from paying interest directly to users. They didn't want stablecoins to act like unregulated bank accounts.
Okay, so if I hold a stable coin, the issuer can't pay me interest. So what's the fight?
The loophole. The banks argue that the Genius Act left a massive loophole where exchanges intermediaries like Coinbase or Kraken can still pay rewards to users.
Oh.
So the issuer isn't paying you, but the exchange is sharing that revenue with you. Right now, you can get something like 3.5% APY just for holding USDC on an exchange.
And I'm guessing the banks who are currently offering me, let me check my app, 0.05% on my checking account are not thrilled about that.
They are furious. We have reports from White House meetings where the big banks, JP Morgan, Bank of America, are lobbying incredibly hard.
How hard?
They spent nearly $57 million in 2025 alone on this specific issue. Brian Moynihan, the CEO of Bank of America, reportedly warned the White House explicitly about deposit flight.
Deposit flight. That sounds like a polite way of saying bank run.
Essentially, yes. I mean, put yourself in the consumer's shoes. If you can hold a digital dollar on an app and get 3.5% safe and liquid, or hold a digital dollar at Bank of America and get near zero.
I mean, the math isn't hard. I'd move it to the app.
And that is the terror for the banks. Moynihan is warning that trillions of dollars could migrate out of the traditional banking system and into these crypto platforms.
And banks need those deposits. That's their cheap funding.
It's their entire business model. They take your deposit at 0%, lend it out for a mortgage at 6%, and pocket the difference. If they lose the cheap deposits, their business model just breaks. It breaks. It's an existential threat. So they're demanding that the Clarity Act closes this loophole and bans exchanges from paying that yield.
That explains the viciousness, and this brings us to that nihilist comment from Treasury Secretary Bessent.
Right. So Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is trying to mediate this. He wants the bill passed because the U.S. needs these rules to compete globally. But in testimony on February 5th, he basically snapped.
He lost his patience.
He really did. He lost it with the crypto industry holdouts who refused to compromise on this yield issue.
What did he say exactly?
He called them nihilists. He said if they don't want to play ball and compromise with the banks, they should move to El Salvador.
Ouch. The U.S. Treasury Secretary telling American companies to pack up and move to El Salvador. That is not subtle.
It shows the pressure he's under. The White House has set this hard deadline of February 28th, that's next week, to cut a deal on this yield issue. If they don't, the Senate Banking Committee might just kill the bill entirely.
And the clock is ticking even faster because of the midterms, right? Segment 3, the stakes. We're looking at the 2026 midterm elections, and the amount of money sitting on the sidelines is just staggering.
It is unprecedented. We're looking at a war chest from a group called the Fair Shake PAC.
Right.
They have $193 million cash on hand right now to support pro-crypto candidates.
$193 million. That is presidential campaign levels of money.
For congressional seats.
Who is funding that?
It's the industry titans. Coinbase put in $25 million. Ripple put in $25 million. Andreessen Horowitz, the big venture capital firm, put in $24 million. They're effectively saying to Congress, if you don't pass clear laws, we will fund the opponent of anyone who stands in our way.
That is playing hardball. And the betting markets seem to be reacting to this cash. I'm looking at Polymarket right now.
What are the odds saying?
Currently, Polymarket gives the Clarity Act a 70% chance of passing. But it's so volatile. It crashed to 50% last week when Coinbase threatened to pull support, then it bounced right back up.
It shows how responsive the legislative process is to this specific lobby now.
Yeah.
But there's another piece of the bill, unrelated to yield, that's driving a lot of this political energy.
Yes, Title VI.
The anti-CBDC provision.
Right.
This was added via amendment in the House. It's explicitly titled the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act.
Surveillance State Act. Tell us how you really feel, Congress.
Subtle, right. But it does exactly what it says. It prohibits the Federal Reserve from offering retail products directly to individuals. Basically, it bans the Fed from creating a digital dollar that you or I could hold in a government app.
So it prevents the government from bypassing the private banking system.
It does, but it also addresses privacy.
Mm.
The argument is that if the Federal Reserve runs the ledger, the government sees every coffee you buy, every donation you make, every book you purchase. This amendment codifies a philosophical stance that money creation and payment processing should remain in the private sector.
To protect privacy.
To protect privacy, which contrasts so sharply with what we're seeing globally. You mentioned earlier the U.S. is playing catch-up.
We're way behind, it seems.
Way behind. While Washington fights over yield percentages, the rest of the world is moving. Hong Kong is issuing its first stablecoin licenses in March. China is doubling down on its bans but pushing its own government-controlled digital currency aggressively.
What about Europe?
The EU is actually struggling. We have reports from European companies warning that the EU is falling behind because their regulations, called MiCA, are a bit too restrictive compared to what the U.S. is proposing. They're looking at our Clarity Act and saying, if America passes this, all the innovation goes back to Silicon Valley.
So the U.S. has a chance to set the global standard, but only if they can stop fighting about interest rates for 2 seconds.
Pretty much.
Let's bring this down to the ground level. Segment 4, practical impacts. If this bill actually passes in the next 2 weeks, what changes for the person listening to this right now?
A few major things. First, Section 105C. This is huge for the purists and the privacy advocates.
Okay.
It explicitly codifies the right to self-custody.
Self-custody. Break that down for the listener who just keeps their crypto on an exchange.
It means the government cannot ban hardware wallets. You have a legal right to hold your own private keys. You do not need a bank to hold your assets for you.
So it protects the be-your-own-bank idea.
It protects the whole concept crypto was built on. It effectively prevents the government from forcing you into the banking system and ensures that peer-to-peer transactions remain legal.
That's a big win for civil liberties. But what about the corporate side? We saw a really interesting note from the conference board about Starbucks.
This is my favorite example of why this matters for the average person.
Okay.
The conference board analysis suggests that with regulatory clarity, we will see massive corporate adoption. So look at Starbucks. Right now, Starbucks holds about $1.77 billion in unredeemed gift cards.
Right. I think I have about $50 of that on my app right now. That's basically an interest-free loan from us to Starbucks.
Exactly. It's a float. But under the new rules, and with the clarity on stablecoins, Starbucks could potentially tokenize that float. They could use stablecoins to generate that 4% or 5% yield on that $1.77 billion.
Whoa! Legally and safely.
Legally and safely.
So if Starbucks tokenizes their loyalty program, what does that look like for me?
They effectively become a fintech company. Your loyalty points could eventually become a tradable asset or a yield-bearing account. Imagine if your Starbucks stars could earn interest.
Or be swapped instantly for airline miles on a decentralized exchange.
Exactly. That blurs the line between coffee shop and bank pretty aggressively.
It does, and that's the future this bill unlocks. Everything becomes a potential financial rail. Your airline, your coffee shop, your grocery store, they can all plug into this system.
But for the regular consumer, hearing Starbucks becomes a bank might sound a little risky.
Yeah, are there protections? We aren't going to see another FTX where they take our money and gamble it on Bahamian real estate?
That is the core promise of the Clarity Act. It mandates the strict segregation of customer assets. No more commingling. If you put money on an exchange or in a Starbucks wallet, it has to stay there. It cannot be used for the company's bets.
And what happens if the company goes bust?
The bill requires clear disclosures about bankruptcy treatment. So no more guessing if you're a secured creditor or just out of luck.
So in theory, your assets are safe.
In theory, if the platform goes bankrupt, your assets are segregated and returned to you rather than being swallowed up to pay the company's debts.
That sounds like the clarity part of the title actually doing its job.
It really is.
Okay, so let's summarize this beast. The Clarity Act is an attempt to turn the Wild West into a regulated market. It gives the SEC and CFTC clear lanes. It protects code as speech for developers. It protects your right to hold your own wallet.
But it is currently being held hostage by a fight over who gets to pay you 3.5% interest.
The banks, who want to keep your deposits cheap.
Or the crypto exchanges, who want to offer you a higher yield.
And everything hinges on the next 11 days, February 28th. If they miss that deadline, the bill might die, the midterms take over, and we are back to square one.
And Secretary Bessent will likely be very, very unhappy.
I would not want to be in that room.
No. But I want to leave the listener with a thought here. Something to chew on while we watch this countdown.
Go for it.
We're talking about Starbucks tokenizing gift cards. We're talking about BlackRock and Bank of America lobbying over yield. We are talking about the U.S. government holding $29 billion in Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, which they do now.
It's becoming mainstream. It's corporate.
It is. But ask yourself this. If this bill passes, if the Wild West officially becomes a regulated market with rules written by J.P. Morgan and the U.S. Senate, is the rebel phase of crypto officially over?
That is a heavy question.
It is. Because we might be witnessing the mass adoption of the technology, the blockchain, the speed, the efficiency, but the death of the counterculture that built it. The original dream was to separate money from the state and the banks.
Right.
If crypto just becomes a more efficient way for Bank of America to move money, did the revolution win? Or did it just get acquired?
That is something to think about while you sip your tokenized latte. We'll be watching that February 28th deadline like hawks. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.